heard the guy shouting, God save us, and the gunshot follows.
In July 2005, about 56 West African migrants, including about 44 Ghanaians who were using an unapproved route through the Gambia to Europe to seek greener pastures, were reportedly killed in the Gambia. 15 years after the killings, William Nyarko, Executive Director of the Africa Center for International Law and Accountability, ACILA, and coordinator of the Jammeh2Justice Ghana Coalition, J2J, set out to investigate the unlawful killings, expose the untruths and cover-ups, and locate more survivors and victims' families, and more. He led a team to 5 countries to uncover the truth about the massacre of the Ghanaians, Nigerians, Togolese, and other West African migrants. He first spoke to the then only known survivor, Martin Kyere, who narrates how it all started.
In 2005, I set off to Senegal. So I used a road, Techiman to Paga, and Paga to Burkina Faso, just Ouaga, from Ouaga to Bamako. In Bamako, there I take a train to Kyere. Then from Kyere, I take a car to Kidra, which is the border of Senegal, Mali. So from Kidra, I take a car to Tamba, and from Tamba straight to Dakar.
It took you about 5 days or more?
Yes, it's over 5 days, but I did not go straight, so I spent some days in the Burkina and Mali before I was able to get to Dakar.
Martin said after spending a few months in Dakar, Senegal, hanging around the Grand Yoff, a slum in Dakar similar to Nima in Accra, Ghana, just like many other Ghanaian and West African migrants, they met with a contact, a connection man, who promised to take them to Europe through Senegal, the Gambia, the Mediterranean Sea, and finally to Europe. From the Grand Yoff, they took a bus to Saly in the Mbo district in Senegal, some 70 kilometers from Dakar. In Saly, they stayed in a hotel for 4 days, waiting for the canoe which was to take them from Saly through Banjul to Cape Verde and then to Europe on the Mediterranean Sea. The canoe arrived on the beach of Saly on Friday, July 22, 2005, and the migrants comprising Ghanaians, Ivorians, Senegalese, Togolese, and Nigerians made their way through the road of no return. So called because, according to the migrants, as soon as they passed through the tunnel, they knew they were not coming back. They were on their way to Europe to seek greener pastures. They made their way to where the canoe had docked, boarded and left the shores of Saly in Senegal at about 6 p.m. on Friday, July 22, 2005. Accounts differ as to how they found themselves in Gambian waters, while Martin Kyere says the canoe strayed into Gambian waters and that they went to the Gambia to establish contact with the captain of the vessel they were to travel to Europe in. Robert Essien, another survivor, said they went to the Gambia to pick up other passengers. Be that as it may, the migrants landed in Banjul port on the morning of July 23, 2005. Some of the migrants got off the canoe at the shore of Banjul port in the Gambia, and the canoe took off to the other side of Banjul in Barra town. There, the migrants were arrested by the police, taken to the Barra police station where they were kept for a while and then handed over to the Gambia's Naval Patrol Team. The Naval Patrol Team took them across the river from Barra to Banjul, put them in a bus and distributed them to several police stations, including Kanifeng and Bundung police station. The junglers came for the migrants at night, took them to a safe house called Baba Job's compound in Kotu. Martin told our investigators the events leading to his escape.
Yes. They just opened the compound at the hall and they came in. For the first floor, they hold your hand, they take you outside the compound, they tie your hand back with a wire. So they did for four of our first guys. You know, they tied him 4 in 1, and they used the rest of the rope to tie their necks and send it back to their hand. So they're just looking up. They push them to the white pickup, the buckets inside, and they place their bags around them. So with the rest 4, they did the same to us. They took off our jeans and we left my underwear black stretch, and they not took off my shirt. Yes, I was wearing a brown shirt with V-neck. So they tied our hands back, but they did not use the wire on our neck, and they placed our bags around us. So the bucket was full. They decided to go for the ladies.
According to Martin, as the truck sped off, there were horrific incidents.
Speeding. So we get a place where one guy is a Nigerian, he was praying, Allahu Akbar, he's a Muslim. And the guy came with the cutlass. I said, who is that? So the way the cutlass came in, we showed this guy. And he brought him back and used the cutlass at his backbone here. He just cut it one time. Wow. And his backbone opened and the blood started flowing. And the guy is just breathing over. And the blood is just flowing. So we branched from the highway and used untied road where we get to a village. A sheep crossed the pickup and knocked the sheep, and they stopped and placed the sheep between me and Kwaju, and they say, you are going to travel with this sheep tonight, okay? So these people are going to kill us.
Those horrific incidents gave him and others an indication that they were going to be executed, hence his decision to find a way to escape. This is how Martin put it.
Pretend from the valley without our bags. So they give us a few meters and discuss 1 or 2 issues. So they came to join the car again, where we are going deeper. Everybody was trying to do something, and I try and I get my hand off from the wire, and I tell the guys, in fact my hand is off from the wire. So I decide to help them to take off the wire, but I was not able to do. And they say it's God who want to save you, so that you will tell the world how and why you have been killed by Jammeh, because in the source we know that this man is because we are in the hands of police. So someone else can say go, and they say if you go they will kill us fast. And so when the pickup was about to stop, I jumped from the pickup to the forest, and I heard a noise from the pickup. Who is that? But I did not look back. I started running fast, heavily. So about 4 to 5 steps, I was tied by something in the forest, and it brought me down. And the gunshot passes over me. They are just shooting everywhere. So I relaxed more, and I found out that they have taken a big torchlight. They throw it here, and then they shoot in that side. They throw it and shoot that side. So I wake myself up from the ground, and I heard a noise. Oh, Radijio, God save us, God save us. And gunshot follows. And I stopped.
Unlike Martin, the other migrants could not escape. On the same day they arrived in Banjul on a canoe from Salé in Senegal, 8 of them were taken at night by the Junglers, a paramilitary unit within the Gambian military that takes orders directly from President Yahya Jammeh, and summarily executed them. Their bodies dumped by the road in front of Brufut Forest near Ghana Town, a town predominantly inhabited by Ghanaians living in the Gambia. The remaining migrants, who included Martin, were shot over several days in Casamance in Senegalese territory. The Foroyaa newspaper in the Gambia reported the killing of the first 8 Ghanaians, alleging that 8 persons might have been killed somewhere and their bodies dumped in the Brufut Forest. In confirming the newspaper report, our investigator located 2 Ghanaians who were resident in the Gambia who recounted what they witnessed.
I saw the first 8 bodies lying on Ghana Town Tenji Road in the front of a car passing Ghana Town. I saw some boys stopping the car, and they never stopped. I found 8 bodies. The legs are outside and the head is inside the bush.
Joshua, na me call doctor before Tenji. Mama kono.
I live in Old Joshua. I was going to see my doctor in Tangi when I saw people and police on the Tangi road. People got out of their cars to witness what was happening. Initially, I didn't want to get down, and I heard people saying they are dead bodies. So I got down from the vehicle and I saw bodies lined up by the roadside. Their legs were close to the road and their heads inside the forest. I asked in English, "Who are these people?" And some said they are Ghanaians who came to the Gambia to stage a coup. Ghana attempted to have a joint investigation with the Gambia, but the Gambia, under then-President Yahya Jammeh, frustrated investigations. Mr. David Asante Apietu, then Director General of the Ghana Police CID, who later became the Inspector General of Police and retired recently, was a member of the Ghanaian investigative team and narrates how it was like at the time.
It has really brought me some horrid memories of the period when we were in the Senegal and the Gambia to investigate the killings and the disappearances of our fellow human beings in Africa.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and the UN stepped in and established a fact-finding team to investigate the extrajudicial killings. After nearly 9 months investigating the extrajudicial killing of the migrants, the fact-finding team, which was led by Mr. Curtis Ward, submitted its report in April 2009 to ECOWAS and the UN. The report absolved the Gambia and, by implication, President Yahya Jammeh of blame for the massacre, noting that rogue elements in the Gambian security forces acting on their own were responsible for the massacre of the Ghanaians and other West African migrants. Yahya Jammeh also seized on the UN ECOWAS report to proclaim his innocence. Martin had this to say about the UN ECOWAS report.
Tiny country like Gambia, and they are not able to bring out the truth of matter. UN ECOWAS fact-finding commission. So who can we trust again? You see? So the shame is not only in the face of Yahya Jammeh, but also the fact-finding committee of UN and ECOWAS commission.
But evidence of Yahya Jammeh's complicity in the killings began to emerge 4 years after the UN and ECOWAS absolved the Gambia and Yahya Jammeh of blame for the extrajudicial killings. In February 2003, Warrant Officer Class 2, Boubacar Bailo, one of the drivers who drove the Ghanaians and other West Africans to be summarily executed, alleged on US-based Freedom Radio that the order to kill the Ghanaians and other West African nationals came directly from Yahya Jammeh. The remaining Ghanaians and other West African migrants who were not killed in the Brufut forest were driven to the Gambia-Senegal border at night and shot, and their bodies dumped in a well. In addition, following the exit of Yahya Jammeh to Equatorial Guinea after losing the presidential election, 3 lawyers working for Human Rights Watch, Reed Brody, Marion Volkman, and Trial International Benedict de Merlos, put out an investigative report alleging Jammeh's complicity in the massacre of the Ghanaians.
We have new information, and it is clear that the migrants were not killed by rogue elements, but that they were murdered by a paramilitary death squad, the Junglers, that took its orders directly from Yahya Jammeh.
According to Mr. de Merlos, after ordering the unlawful killing of the migrants, Yahya Jammeh tried to cover up the evidence.
The Gambian authorities at the highest level had engineered to cover up the crimes and made actually this investigation impossible. First, the IGP, the Gambian IGP at the time, actually called a very high-ranking official from several state bodies that had witnessed the crime, that were present at the Naval Command when the Gambian migrants came in. And he told this official that they shouldn't speak, and that an investigation, UN ECOWAS investigation, was upcoming, and that they shouldn't harm the reputation of Gambia. So imagine in a state of fear like Gambia that these orders were well obeyed. Maybe even more seriously, the IGP and some accomplices actually destroyed evidence. They took the logbooks from the police station where the Gambian migrants had passed, and they changed it. They destroyed the evidence of the passage of the migrants through these police stations. And then they also took the logbook from the ship that brought the migrants from Barra to Banjul, and also changed the evidence there. So after this, it was very difficult for the investigators to actually find the truth. But as you saw, now we've been able to shed a light on the events. And Yahya Jammeh, after the UN investigative body concluded that only rogue elements had committed these crimes, was parading and saying that these UN conclusions had vindicated him. But now with these new findings, it's a whole different story. Now Yahya Jammeh is a prime suspect.
As well, 3 junglers made startling revelations to the Gambia Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission, TRRC, concerning the killing of the Ghanaians and other West African nationals.
In 2005, a jungle operation. Did you participate in an operation in 2005?
2005.
Yes, July
yes,
2005.
I did.
Can you tell us about it?
That was these Ghanaians who they said were mercenaries. Solo stops. We all come down. Sanamanjang, Malik Jada. We are standing a distance where the well was. You will bring the person up to the well. They will fire at him, and he will fall into the well.
Before all that shooting, were you told what you were supposed to do?
Okay, when we arrived at the ground,
yes,
Solo said these people are mercenaries. The order from the head of state, the former president Yahya Jammeh, is they are all to be executed.
I shot at the victim.
You killed him?
Yes, sir. Saying, Jesus save us. Jesus help us. And this was being said constantly.
Yahya Jammeh is now living in exile in Equatorial Guinea under an ECOWAS, UN and Africa Union facilitated agreement. He did not respond to a request by the investigative team to respond to allegations he allegedly ordered the massacre of the Ghanaians and other West African migrants. 2 letters requesting his response were sent to him through the embassy of the Equatorial Guinea in Ghana, and Mr. Osman Rambo Jatta, deputy party leader of Yahya Jammeh's party, the Alliance for Patriotic Reorientation and Construction, APRC, in January 2020. Our investigative team also located and contacted Ambassador Curtis Ward, who led the ECOWAS UN fact-finding team that absolved Yahya Jammeh and Gambia of blame for the unlawful killings, asking, among other things, how he reconciles the fact-finding team's conclusion and the public testimonies of the Gambians who alleged they participated in the unlawful killing on the orders of Mr. Jammeh. He responded he will get back to us shortly, but as at the time of completing this documentary, 4 weeks after receiving his first response, he had not provided the response as promised. The investigative team also sent a request for comments to the ECOWAS Commission in light of the public testimony by the junglers and for a release of the ECOWAS and UN fact-finding report, but the Commission did not respond to our request for comment or release of the report. Following the UN and ECOWAS report, Ghana and the Gambia signed a Memorandum of Understanding on 2nd July 2009 in Sirte, Libya, under the auspices of ECOWAS and the UN. The two countries pledged, among other things, to prosecute the perpetrators of the massacre. The Gambia provided 500,000 United States dollars towards the burial expenses, not compensation, for those who were killed, and the remains of the deceased, which had been buried in a mass grave in Banjul in July 2005, were reportedly exhumed and flown to Ghana for burial. The remains of the others has still not been recovered, and some of the victims' families and survivor Martin Tre have cast doubt on whether the remains that were brought to Ghana were the actual remains of those who were killed and dumped in Brufut Forest and subsequently buried in a mass grave in July 2005.
Tell us about the funeral and all of those events. The bodies were brought to Ghana.
Yes. That is what we know. But whether the rare bodies or any bodies, what we know is that the bodies were brought to Ghana, and it was very stinky. You can't go close to it's not easy to be around. So they did not open the coffee for anyone to identify that this is this guy or this is this guy. So what we know that there is something in the coffee. They just provide Ghana flag, coffees, and we just go around the coffees, and after that we take the coffee to Osu Cemetery for burial.
So any was done?
No, nothing like that, and nothing like that has been heard so far as I concern in the families. We haven't heard anything about DNA. We don't know about the bodies that they brought in. What we see is the coffees, and what we experience that is stench. So after some hours, I think 2 hours at the burial, at the funeral service, we send the coffees back to Osu Cemetery for mass burial. Yes, so it's like the bodies that they buried after some 2-3 years ago, they go for the same bodies and put in the coffee and brought back to Ghana.
So you dispute that?
No, totally.
Based on the stench?
Based on the stench, and it's totally, it's not acceptable, and it's not true that this is the bodies that they brought from Gambia to Ghana. No.
In a follow-up discussion with Dr. Lawrence Edusei, the pathologist who exhumed and brought the remains of the 8 deceased to Ghana, he confirmed that no DNA testing was done on the remains and the families, even though he recommended to the Mills administration that DNA testing be done. Our independent research found that an untreated human body starts decomposing within 24 to 72 hours. Nails and teeth fall out within a month. The body liquefies and the skeleton decomposes within 1 year. If Martin's account of a foul smell holds, then it's doubtful that the remains that were exhumed nearly 4 years after the mass burial in the Gambia were the same remains that were buried at the Osu Cemetery. Another controversy pertains to the apparent misappropriation of 500,000 United States dollars that the Gambia provided to Ghana to assist with the burial expenses of the Ghanaian migrants who died in the Gambia. Mina Mensah, Executive Director of the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, questioned how the money was spent, as reported to Parliament by then Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Alhaji Mohamed Mumuni. Ghana even took 7,000 Ghana cedis out of the money provided by the Gambia and presented it as its own funeral donation to the victims of the families.
Of the 500,000 USD, how they used it. Alhaji Mumuni said that 25,000 was used for funeral reception for over 600 persons, 11,200 for construction of tombs and other related expenses, 12,200 cedis for transportation of bereaved families who attended the funeral, 4,400 Ghana cedis for payment of AMA plots for 8 graves, and 1,200 for the purchase of schnapps. The rest were 7,200 for payment of coffins and transportation of the 8 bodies, 400 Ghana cedis for printing of invitation cards, 2,500 for portable toilets, and then the National Theatre was paid 1,000 cedis, and the police band also 1,000 cedis. And according to the news report, it says, however, what baffled some MPs was government's claim that it had used 7,000 from the Gambian donation as its own donation to the bereaved families.
In February 2015, how the 500,000 United States dollars was spent was raised on the floor of Parliament again when Mr. Yao Afol, Member of Parliament for Jammeh South, asked Madam Hannah Tete, then Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, how the money was spent. Madam Tete explained that the 500,000 United States dollars amounted to 750,000 Ghana cedis at the exchange rate of 1 United States dollar to 1 Ghana cedi 40 pesos. According to her, 420,330 Ghana cedis was paid to the families of the deceased as funeral expenses and compensation, adding that the amount included 270,000 Ghana cedis paid to 27 beneficiaries at 10,000 Ghana cedis each. 280,170 Ghana cedis of the money was returned to the government chest and deposited into the consolidated fund, she added. However, Martin Tre, a survivor of the unlawful killings, wants the money returned to the families.
In consolidated accounts, and now later we found out there is no money in that consolidated accounts, and we don't know where the money is. We want the money to be shared for the families and the victims. Yes, because it's not Ghana's money, it's the money for victims.
Even though the massacre occurred some 15 years ago because of lack of justice, compensation and closure, families continue to grieve over the loss of their family members. In Ghana, victims' families have not relented in their calls for justice.
Jammeh, na mambrabo me madrabo ebesi yasan. Ei, o mempeni. Masem we de me dawo. Be no any seven nibi. Me chi nibi me nibi. Me o ko bi aba me ye dio. Masendi.
The investigation also located victims' families in Togo and Nigeria. In Togo, we located families of 2 of the victims of the massacre, Victor Agbobo and Kosi Odei. The investigative team traveled some 270 kilometers from Accra to Togo through Lome to Abatimezupe to locate Victor's family. The reaction from Victor's family was understandably saddening.
Victor Koya wakoka Senegal. And I was in Kramani, Mauli, Nyavo Mauli.
My brother Victor was going overseas. He sent a message that he was in Senegal and needed money. My father sent him money again through his friend Nyavo Mauli, and we later heard from him that he was about to set off. Passing through Mali on the river, he and his colleagues were arrested in the Gambia, Yaya Jammeh's country. They were taken to the forest and all their money was taken from them. He saw his colleagues being killed. There was a gentleman who said he could disappear, and Victor said he also wanted to disappear. But no matter how hard Victor tried, he couldn't disappear. He told his colleague who said he could disappear to send a message to his family, Papa Kwesi Oduro, Auntie Julie, and his wife, that he was going to be killed. His friend, who had escaped, came to tell us about what had happened to Victor. Our mom nearly died upon hearing of this sad news. We later held a funeral in Seshi and Agoti-Mezupe in Togo.
It was a year, we are some year, Zupeha, or Togo Muha. And this son, I said, no bay. Metribako Kababy, Metribako Kababy,
In Nigeria, 9 Nigerians were reportedly killed. One of them is Umoze Moje Paul Enagame. Enagame was 29 years old when he was unlawfully killed. His brother, Kenny Enagame, told us in Lagos he could not disclose the death of his brother to his sisters for several years.
We already had knowledge of what happened to him. But my dad was worried. My dad would always ask, have you heard from Paul? We'll lie to him. Yes, we've heard from him. Or no, if he sees his friends, some of his friends, at the point we limited most of his friends. We tried to prevent them from coming because have you heard from Paul? At times we'll just tell them to lie. Yeah, yes, it's fine, but things are a bit tough for him there, so that's why it's not, but you'll get, so my dad had this feeling that something had happened to him. My mom, by the way, passed away when we were still very young, so it was not as if my mom, so it was just my dad. We only had my dad. So my dad was worried. But my siblings, I happened to be the first child. So my siblings, I had briefed them. The boys among us, the men, I'd already briefed them. So it was the ladies, I didn't tell them on time. It was much later. Maybe 3-4 years after the incident. So the aim actually is to get justice for my brother. I mean, Paul was then a person that, I don't know. You see, when somebody is like somebody, to me, it's like somebody that laid his life for us. And I feel that I have that guilt that I could have stopped this. If I had, let me say, if I had the knowledge if I'm this knowledgeable back then, I wouldn't have allowed this journey.
Prominent human rights lawyer Femi Falana, who has been pursuing justice for about 9 Nigerians who were also killed along with the 44 Ghanaians and other West African nationals, told our team in an interview in Lagos, Nigeria, how he became involved in the case and what steps he is taking.
We've been following up the story since they were killed by Yaya Jammeh in 2005 or thereabouts. But there was a lot of cover-up. Even though the UN and ECOWAS carried out an investigation, the report was not released. But we kept up the struggle for accountability and justice. We wanted justice to be done in the matter. So the exit of President Yaya Jammeh in 2016 provided an opportunity to reopen the ugly chapter in the history of the region. And so I belong to a team of a group of international lawyers and human rights activists, that is deeply interested in the matter, it's following up the matter. We have contacted a survivor in Ghana. Out of the 40 Ghanaians, that were affected in the execution, we've contacted a survivor. Along the way, I also got information that out of the 9 Nigerians involved, we got the details of one of them from some investigation that I personally carried out, So that at the end of the day, we're asking for justice. We want President Yaya Jammeh to be brought to justice.
In addition to locating some of the families of the deceased in the West Africa sub-region, we also located 4 new survivors of the massacre. Dennis Kwache, he escaped at Banjul Port on the morning of July 23, 2005, before the canoe left Barra town where the migrants were arrested and taken to Barra police station. He now lives in Germany. Daniel Amankwa, he and 2 others were arrested at Banjul Port and detained at Banjul Police Headquarters for 11 months without charge or trial. He now lives in Spain. Eric Yao Owusu, He was also arrested at Banjul Port with Amankwa and Robert Essien and detained for 11 months without trial. Our investigative team found him in Dakar, Senegal, where he now lives. Finally, Robert Essien, one of the 3 migrants who was also arrested at Banjul Port and detained for 11 months with Eric Iyao Owusu and George Amankwa. Our investigative team followed leads from Senegal and the Gambia about his whereabouts and found him in Axim in the western region of Ghana. Recounting how he and his 2 other colleagues, George Amankwa and Eric Iyao Owusu, were not added to the other migrants who were summarily executed, he said while they were at the police station, some Gambian officials came to the police station to take them to a different place, presumably Baba Job's compound, where the other migrants had been taken earlier and driven to Senegal border and summarily executed. But they resisted and insisted on staying at the police station. He recounts conditions in the Gambian police cell.
Conditions in the Gambian police cell were quite terrible. The ventilation in the cell was poor. We were fed once a day, and the quality of the food was also poor. If we wanted to eat healthy food, we gave our personal money to some of the police officers to buy food for us in Banjul. These officers usually took half the amount of money they bought the food for themselves. For example, if the cost of the food was $10, which was the equivalent of $10, they also took $10 for themselves.
He said while they were in custody, a Ghanaian, Mr. Samuel Ampabeng, who was resident in the Gambia, found them in the cells and eventually got a lawyer to secure their release after having spent 11 months in police custody without charge, trial, or compensation. Upon their release, they were driven to the Senegalese border, where Ghanaian embassy officials in Senegal took custody of them. To verify Robert Essien's account of their unlawful detention, the investigative team set out to locate Samuel Ampabeng from his residence in the Gambia and found him in Kwabeng in the eastern region of Ghana. We traveled with Eric Iyao Owusu, a survivor we found in Dakar, Senegal, to reunite him with the man who secured their release in the Gambia some 14 years ago. They hadn't seen each other in more than a decade. Mr. Ampabeng said to date, he had still not been paid what was promised him by Nana Akufo-Addo, who was then Minister of Foreign Affairs, for locating 3 survivors.
Ghana government, through BBC, I heard that these children are Ghanaians, so Ghana government is searching for them. And a few men I saw Nana Akufo-Addo in Gambia. By that time, he was Foreign Affairs Minister in Akufo regime. This is what the Nana Akufo-Addo come and said about the boys who were saying that they killed them at Tenji. Say they remain 3. Say remain 3. Say yes. So if anybody will see these 3 gentlemen, you will be having a handsome reward. I told them I'm going to search for them and I will see them. My money I went for Ghana government because he make a promise. Ghana government through Nana Akufo-Addo, at that time was Foreign Affairs, he make a report, a comments after he made the Ghanaians. So whoever saw these 3 people, Ghana government could pay all the compensation and then reward you on top.
Calls for justice for the victims of the Gambia massacre are growing in Ghana and West Africa. In Ghana, the coalition of civil society organizations has been formed to advocate justice and compensation for the survivors and the victims' family. The CSO coalition partners are the Africa Center for International Law and Accountability, ACILA, Amnesty International Ghana, Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, CHRI, Human Rights Advocacy Center, HRAC, Media Foundation for West Africa, and the POS Foundation. After launching of the coalition in Ghana in May 2018, some of the leading members who led the advocacy for justice in 2005 had this to say.
It is all about justice for our brothers and sisters and justice for Africa. And I'm happy that today, in May 2018, more than a decade after this struggle started. We have new partners, we have new information, and we have commitment to the process and a final resolution of this issue. At the end of the day, we want ex-President Yahya Jammeh to be prosecuted and punished for this dastardly act.
By bringing pressure to bear on those who hold the levers of power in Ghana, to get the government of Ghana fully and irrevocably committed to ensuring that Yahya Jammeh is indeed brought to justice.
Parliament also took up the matter from 2005 until the matter went cold, has taken up the issue again following a statement by Honourable Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, Member of Parliament for North Tongue constituency and ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament on International Human Rights Day on December 10, 2019.
I rise to make this statement in commemoration of International Human Rights Day, which is today, December 10. I would like to use this day to urge our government and all stakeholders to work to actualize the provisions of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by seeking justice and compensation for the 44 Ghanaian migrants who were massacred in the Gambia.
He also urged Parliament to summon the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Madam Shirley Ayoko-Botwe, and the ECOWAS Commission to release the ECOWAS UN fact-finding report to the House and the families of the victims. His statement was supported by both sides of the House, the NDC and the NPP members of Parliament.
I want to join the maker of the statement, Mr. Speaker, to call on our government to renew the action of fresh investigations into the matter, especially as it has met, Mr. Speaker, that these were seen to have sprung from orders given by the higher authorities of the Gambia and prosecuted by men in uniform, as has been revealed at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in for the renewal of action on that matter, and for action to be taken to bring the perpetrators to book. I believe that the souls of the departed cannot get rest until justice is done for them, Mr. Speaker. And that justice entails that the perpetrators of that heinous, despicable, and unspeakable crime are brought to justice so that their souls can rest in peace, knowing that their countrymen stood behind them when it mattered most. Mr. Speaker, not only do they deserve justice, they also deserve compensation for their families. They left behind families and others who today are suffering the trauma of having to fend for themselves. Some of them children even attending schools. Mr. Speaker, this action is not one too much for our government and the sub-regime to take up.
So I add my voice that this matter should not be left to rot in dossiers. If you have 44 Ghanaians going through what we call extrajudicial killings, that is to say, by the fiat of one man and without regard to the rule of law, they were just killed. And we believe that such a matter, should be ignored. We will set a very bad precedent for those who do not respect humanity but nevertheless want to rule. Mr. Speaker, we should not let this matter go cold.
After the statement and discussion, the Speaker of Parliament, Professor Aaron Mike Okwe, referred the matter to the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee for study. The committee is to submit a report to Parliament when it comes back from recess. However, as Parliament seems poised to have Ghana play an active role to reopen the massacre of their constituents, bring perpetrators to justice, and ensure payment of adequate compensation, the executive of Ghana appears to be playing a passive role, as indicated by President Akufo-Addo's answer to a question about what steps he is taking to ensure justice for the victims of the Gambia massacre. 14 years ago, 44 Ghanaians were killed in the Gambia. At that time, you were the Minister of Foreign Affairs. This year, it was revealed during the Gambia's Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Committee that the soldiers were acting on the orders of then-President Yahya Jammeh. Mr. President, at that time in 2005, when the incident happened, what did you do? And now that you're President of the Republic of Ghana and this new evidence has come to light, what are you going to do about it?
When I went in 2005, it was to establish the circumstances. I came away with a clear understanding that there was complicity on the part of the then Gambian authorities. Revelations that have come basically should lead the Gambian authorities to instigate the trials. I've spoken to the President of the Gambia on this matter. And his attitude was, we know the position that we're in is brand new, what we're trying to do, things are still insecure, please give me time. So we'll continue to work with them. Doing something about it here would be to go and get hold of President Jammeh in Malabo and bring him here to Accra. And unfortunately, I don't have that kind of authority and that kind of power. But in making sure that the authorities in the Gambia try and do something about it, we continue to stress it and talk to them about it. And hopefully, when they feel that the circumstances in their country, the stability they're seeking is more secure, they may be persuaded to act on the matter.
Others believe Ghana can and should do more by demonstrating political will to get justice and compensation for the Ghanaians who were massacred in the Gambia. Justice Emil Short, a former judge for the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda and former commissioner, Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice Ghana, while calling for Yahya Jammeh and the junglers who summarily executed the Ghanaians to be brought to justice, also argued that Ghanaian courts may have jurisdiction over the massacre of the Ghanaians, even though the massacre occurred outside Ghana, citing Section 56, subsection 4N of the Courts Act 1993 and Criminal Offences Amendment Act 2012, Act 849. He said Ghana could also use the doctrine of universal jurisdiction to bring Yahya Jammeh and the soldiers who participated in the unlawful killing to justice.
From the precursors of international law to the present day, the international community has considered or consolidated the idea that the nature and seriousness of certain crimes transcend the responsibility of a particular sovereign state and affects humanity as a whole. So the doctrine seeks to empower courts, no matter where the offense was committed and no matter who the accused persons are, to invoke this doctrine to hold accountable people who commit such international crimes.
The calls for justice have not only come from Ghanaians, some prominent Gambians, including chairperson of the Gambia Human Rights Commission, Mr. Emmanuel Daniel Diouf, has also advocated justice for the Ghanaians who were massacred in the Gambia. Speaking on the topic, Justice for GH44, a shared responsibility of Ghana and the Gambia, at a symposium to mark International Human Rights Day in Accra on December 10, 2019, Mr. Diouf said both Ghana and the Gambia have an obligation to ensure they get justice and compensation for the 44 Ghanaians who were massacred in the Gambia in 2005.
Government of the Gambia should also award adequate compensation to the families of the victims and also hand over the remains of the victims to the Ghanaian authorities to be handed to their families for final and honorable fitting burial. The obligation of the state of Ghana, out of the 54 migrants that were killed, 44 were identified by witnesses to be Ghanaians. It is therefore obligatory that the Ghanaian authorities also demand the Gambian authorities to conduct a proper and thorough investigation of the events that led to the deaths of the Ghanaians especially in the light of the new information that has emerged in the TRRC hearings. The Ghanaian authorities should also seek the extradition and trial in Ghana of named perpetrators who may not be on Gambian soil but have been implicated in the gruesome murders. Or where this is difficult, the Ghanaian authorities should put pressure to bear on the Gambian government to seek the extradition of these perpetrators to face justice in the Gambia.
Another prominent Gambian, who is also the Advocacy and Communications Coordinator, Africa Regional Office of the Open Society Foundation, Mr. Jegan Gray Johnson, has also called on Ghana to seek justice for the victims of the massacre. While apologizing for the acts committed by his fellow Gambians, saying those acts do not represent Gambians, he nonetheless said Ghana and the Gambia must ensure the perpetrators are brought to justice.
We know the truth. There's no speculation or ambiguity over this matter. We know who did what, to whom, how it was done, under whose command it was done. We now must know why it was done. And for that, we must not simply bandage the wounds of victims beneath the wheels of injustice, but drive a spoke into the wheel itself. We must do what is right and extradite the murderers and the conspirators to Ghana to face trial in the court of law now.
As well, French and German lawyer Marion Volkmann, who also investigated the massacre of the Ghanaians and other West African migrants, is urging Ghana to walk the talk and bring Yahya Jammeh and other perpetrators to justice.
The government of Ghana, which showed in the past that they had an appetite to find out the truth and to uncover what happened, should reopen the investigation, because now that the regime is gone in Gambia, we were able to find new evidence. We have people that are willing to talk. The survivor is ready to testify. There is a whole body of evidence that is pointing into one direction, and that's the former head of state, Yahya Jammeh. So we encourage really the Ghana government to walk the talk, to do what they've promised to do. It concerns 44 of their nationals. One could even imagine what the reaction would be of a state like the US if 44 of their nationals had been killed in a foreign state.
Nigeria is also stepping up pressure for justice for the massacre of its citizens. Prominent human rights lawyer Mr. Femi Falana told Aneta Felix for the Jammeh2Justice Ghana campaign in an interview in Lagos, the Gambia and the named perpetrators must be held accountable.
Well, I can tell you that on this matter, I'm collaborating with the government, particularly the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They've made information available to us, because the High Commission, as I said, also investigated the incident since Nigerians were involved, and that is the duty and responsibility of every government to protect its own nationals and citizens. And if they are killed extrajudicially, the government must take it up. And so we are mounting prayer on the government of Nigeria to also demand for justice.
Definitely step up and seek justice and compensation for its citizens. The survivors and victims' families are also looking up to Ghana. Ghana has several options it could exercise to bring the named perpetrators to justice and demand compensation for the victims' families and survivors to bring closure to the victims. Although President Akufo-Addo says he has spoken to President Barrow to take action against the perpetrators, it is doubtful that the Gambia will take any meaningful action against the named perpetrators, as the junglers who confessed to participating in the killings were released from custody shortly after their testimonies and have since not been prosecuted. Similarly, it is unlikely the Gambia will bring former President Yahya Jammeh to justice in the Gambia, since more Ghanaians were unlawfully killed or have to this day disappeared, Ghana must lead the efforts to bring the named perpetrators to justice. It has an entry point with the MOU, which provides that the perpetrators, when found, must be prosecuted. It can reopen an investigation with the ultimate aim of prosecuting the named perpetrators under Ghana law, or lead efforts for the establishment of a special court in West Africa, since other West African nationals including Nigeria, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal and the Gambia were also unlawfully killed. A similarly constituted special court was established under the Extraordinary Chambers in Senegal that brought former Chadian dictator Hissène Habré to justice. Finally, since some of the crimes of the massacre rise to the level of international crimes, including crimes against humanity, Ghana may also refer the massacre of its citizens to the International Criminal Court in The Hague, Netherlands, if neither the Gambia nor Ghana is able or willing to prosecute the named perpetrators. Either way, Ghana cannot be passive. It must lead. And Martin Tre, the spokesperson for the survivors and victims' families, articulated the demand for justice and compensation aptly.
What we want the Ghana government to do is we wanting to open another investigation team to go into this matter deeply and find out where the remains of Ghanaians are, who is capable of killing all these Ghanaians. And indeed, these people deserve to have access to justice, and the families need to be duly compensated, and the perpetrators must be brought before court.